Hello, my fellow geeks. This is the Indian AvGeek episode number 77, and my name is Vishal Mehra. If you have ever walked through an airport terminal and wondered who keeps it all running, you'd be interested to know about my guest today. He spent over 2 decades across the APAC region with global giants SITA and Amadeus, and is now the business head for WAISL. Today, we are discussing everything related to technology in aviation, almost, including why upgrading a live operating airport feels like performing an open heart surgery. Welcome to the Indian AvGeek, Sunil.
Good morning, Vishal, and good morning to all your listeners too, wherever they are. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. You've had a front row seat to aviation IT from three really distinct vantage points, Sunil, from SITA, from Amadeus, and now WAISL. At each stage, what was your mental model of who the real customer was? Was it the airline, the airport, the government, or the passenger?
And you've started with a very relevant and classical question because in the case of our industry, each of these players, whether it's the airlines, the airports, or the government, and including ground handling agencies, they are very intertwined because they're all there to collectively turn around aircraft and move passengers and bags. So that's the objective. So in that sense, I would say that the differentiation is not in the customer, in the mental mind. You have to be able to look at who is your contracting party, like in the case, like maybe the airport is contracting you for systems to process passengers, but your customer is the airlines because they are the purpose why these systems are required. The standards are defined by them, and the users and the passengers are really being serviced by the contracting entity and the customer. It is also the case with the governments. Most of our airports traditionally until now have been run by the government. So in this case, the AAI, for example, which holds a stake in all our airports, is in the end a very important stakeholder. But the contracting entity might be the airline or the airport, and the customer might be the airline or airport, depending on who is involved in the passenger journey.
Sure. In your Amadeus role, Sunil, your responsibilities covered airlines, airports, borders, and government across APAC. Very wide brief. I'm just wondering, what did that teach you about these four stakeholder categories and how they differ in terms of how they procure, how they implement, and how they define value from technology?
Okay, and I'm going to ring fence your question to the domain where they all meet, which is at the airport. Okay, now if you look at the business and the operations at an airport, the airlines are more built on an operating model. So for them, what is most important is operations cost. So they think in terms of what is my monthly outflow. And in that sense, their procurement also is along those lines. They think of what is the impact on a monthly basis. The airports are more constrained by what is the infrastructure funding. So they have to make do within whatever funds they have to manage demand, to embark on terminal expansion plans or building new terminals. So it really depends on infrastructure funding. Governments, they are constrained by policies and procedures. They owe it to the people to ensure that the best technology is bought at the best price. So they are constrained by policies and procedures. Knowing all this helps to engage differently with these stakeholders. You engage with airlines on the basis of what is the operational value they get for the operational cost that they incur. Airports are more looking at a larger, longer roadmap, saying what is 7 to 10 years from now, and how am I building capacity for it. And governments, including borders, they are more concerned with what is the level of service and is it consistent across all passengers, irrespective. Is it standard? Does the law apply? Regulations apply to everyone equally?
All right. If you look at SITA and Amadeus, of course, global platforms, but probably built on legacy infra, right? Coming into WAISL, built closer to the ground for Indian conditions, for Indian infra. What surprised you the most about what was possible at WAISL, and where did you find the most these irritating gaps?
Yeah, if you look at the the purpose that each of them serves, these global organizations like Amadeus or SITA or Follett, they are built to address a common problems across all levels. So that is how they have designed their systems, their services, in order to address the same problem everywhere across the globe. Okay, and these require building products with a longer ROI time. Okay, so you can't just build something and then charge it to a few customers in 1 year and try to recover it. It takes a longer time. So in that sense, that is why you would term them as, we use words like legacy for them, because it's very hard for them to turn around and change and do something new, because they've already sunk in and their recovery time is more. Whereas for an organization like WAISL, where we are aligned with working closely on the ground with our airport customers, so we have a greater flexibility to address very specific needs. And in addressing those specific needs, we are able to then combine and build something that can be collectively used across other airports, but retaining the same flexibility of being able to make changes which can be fine-tuned to each and every airport's operating procedures and operating requirements. The biggest surprise for me at WAISL is the sense of urgency to innovate, the willingness to start designing right from scratch and not be constrained by standards and policies and procedures which are applicable across the globe. So we can take a problem and solve it in a far more cost-effective manner than can any of the larger global players. Of course, the gaps then comes in standardization. What is good for one, is it good for another? Or are we continuously reinventing the wheel again and again? And the scaling is one of the big limitations or the irritations uh, that I encounter.
Sunil, you were just talking about, you were referring to cost efficiency as compared to these global players, right? That WAISL enjoys and passes on to its customers. If I could have a brief idea of what kind of cost efficiencies are we talking about usually on an approximate level compared to other players?
You see, I mean, when you talk about global players who have global products and globally designed services, you're not only paying for what you want. Okay, let's say one of the systems of their portfolio. You're also sort of financing the larger portfolio that they have, because for them that is the entire investment that needs to be recovered. So whether it is the monthly operating expenditure, which has elements of infrastructure, manpower, which is shared across a much larger portfolio and hence incurs additional cost, versus something that is very specific and tailor-made, where you're not subsidizing the larger portfolio. So that is how one of the main areas of cost efficiency provides. I mean, I'm not going to compare manpower costs, because that's the easiest to say, but structurally, this is how we differ.
All right. You've worked with airports across the region, Singapore, Seoul, Sydney, and now, of course, India is building massive airports across the country, greenfield airports. Does the Indian scale of aviation break the global IT playbook? Sunil, in your opinion?
I mean, the yes, it does break, but it breaks in terms of the speed at which the Indian aviation industry and infrastructure needs to catch up with demand. So the playbook is broken because India is playing catch up. There is a lot of demand, and there is still a lot more potential to unlock air travel in India. I mean, there is always the classic statistic that only 4% of the Indian population has access to travel, that kind of, and whereas you compare to the European countries, where it could be more than 80%. So in terms of scale of potential and the percentage, we are playing catch up. The other area that I can think of is that the nature of travel in India is also majorly origin destination and mostly domestic national travelers. So if you compare the rest of the airports that you talked about, Singapore, Sydney, Seoul, across Southeast Asia, they have a much diverse global mix of travel. And the focus is, unlike in India, which is more origin destination, is more regional travel hub requirement. So there it is complex. But that is the potential for Indian airports to now grow into from origin destination to hubs. And that is also another area where we are playing catch up.
Yeah, indeed. Though there was, I think, a policy paper out for India becoming hubs and some policies in place now over the last few weeks by MOCA. So let's hope some of that fructifies.
It will demand, if you see
Yeah.
the traffic flowing via India from airports like Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, there is a lot of scope. The various operating procedures need to be worked out. The infrastructure needs to be developed in a way where passengers don't have to, for example, come out of domestic one airport, check in again, take the next flight, and can easily move from one gate to another, for transport.
Yeah, you're right. The airside transfers something to be worked on, and in my opinion, the air train, which GMR seems to be saying will come in another 7, 8, 10 years, should have been here by now.
Mm.
And we can talk about who was responsible for the delay. Was it the airport operator? Was it the government? Was it somebody else? But the fact is, Indian aviation and that vision to be a global hub lost out for the time being, at least. We'll come back to WAISL.
Okay.
When you describe WAISL as the primary solutions partner or rather for Delhi Airport, Hyderabad, Mopa, what does that mean in operational depth, Sunil? Are we talking mission critical systems like AODB, BRS, FIDS, or is the footprint even broader than that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the systems that you mentioned, the common use passenger processing, AODB, BRS, these are very core operational systems. Business of an airport is vastly different than just some of these core systems. So, Weisel is not only involved in these core systems, but the footprint is much broader because what we are doing is engaging with airports to digitally transform their operations, their business, and make them data driven and enabled with AI. So when you think of that, it cuts across. You're not looking at siloed systems of AOD, BRS, FIDS, and passenger processing. You're looking at an entire travel journey. You're looking at an entire bag journey. You're looking at the entire aircraft turnaround, which is impacted by every chain in that journey. Every passenger point impacts the entire journey, and that is what we are doing, is digitally transforming them, even connecting all these siloed systems to make the airport data driven in terms of its decision making, in terms of facilitating aircraft turnaround, and using AI to replace the repetitive tasks.
When you look at the overall Indian airport scene, there are probably four camps, if I can say that. There is, of course, Airports Authority of India. There is GMR. There is Adani now, a significant player, and then there are others, right? People like Zurich Airport running Noida, for example. I'm just keen to know: does the technology roadmap look fundamentally different between all these players, and where does Weisel sit most naturally? I mean, actually, most naturally, of course, would be with GMR because of obvious reasons. But yeah, what's your opinion?
Yes, for this point, you have to look at what is the purpose of each of these sort of owners or operators. I, being government, the primary focus is socio-economic inclusivity as well as development. That is the main perspective. For private operators, socio-economic is important. Yes, it is very important. That's the whole reason why the business exists. But over and above that, it is about running a highly commercialized operations or business which is focused on yields, on revenue, on optimizing costs and monetizing every part of that journey. So Weisel sits at that intersection because we are able to address the socio-economic aspect that a government agency like AI has by focusing on how to best serve, for example, developing and smaller airports by reducing the cost of their operations using technology versus the larger private operators, where we also look at how can you then provide services, information, and the ability by using data to monetize and improve yields from an airport. How do you make use of dwell time to increase revenue from duty free? These are the things that we would be involved in. So it's both sides.
How many Indian airports today have an integrated APOC versus a room just with screens and displaying siloed data? And I know WAISL deployed the digital twin powered APOC at Hyderabad. I'm curious to know what has changed in day to day operations since that implementation.
And if you historically look at how digital tools have evolved, first it was all siloed operations. Airlines did their own thing, ground handling did their own thing, security did their own thing, airside operations did their own thing. So they were doing their own in their own silos. There was a need then to see the focus shifted towards aircraft turnaround, and hence it shifted to communication between these different actors. So the origin of, if you go back, the origin started with co-locating all these operations in one room first, where they could speak across and then over walkies to their operations, tell them what to do and to get information and share it. Now, this co-location then led to bringing each of their systems into one room, led to integrating systems, AODB integrated with the security systems, with building management systems. So they started integrating in order to pass information. What they were shouting across the floor could now be passed. And but that is not enough, because that is still a very reactive way of working. The proactive way of working is to be able to predict what is going to go wrong and then address it ahead of time. And that is where there has always been, I think, for the last 10, 12 years, I've been hearing from CIOs that what they and their operations lack is that visibility of what is exactly happening on ground. Where are my eyes and my legs at? So that visibility is what comes with the digital twin. You get with sensors, with IoT devices, with cameras, different types of structured data which you can get. You can actually recreate what is exactly happening on ground. So coming back to your question, how which are the airports that have deployed this level of APOC? It is still being deployed. This is quite a recent development as far as India is concerned, and they are in various stages. They are in various stages because data is still sitting in inconsistent manners across the airport landscape, structured, unstructured, video, sound. So it's sitting in different formats across different systems. And these systems are siloed. The networks that connect them are not consistent and integrated. So that is what where the investment is now going, is to first create that network platform, over it a data platform, and then over it that predictive APOC.
When do you think my home airport, Delhi, is getting an integrated APOC? Any approximations there?
I mean, these,
Is the Delhi airport working towards it?
yes, all airports are working towards it. Yeah. I mean, in fact, I guess there could be more push if the government regulations made it mandatory, or even created policies so that all airports have to be consistently at a certain level. So that would give it a greater push. But you also have to understand that it's not just Delhi, but any operational airport uh, is like a human being, and anything that you do at a live airport is performing open heart surgery without anesthesia. So you can't pause a live airport and then do these changes. So things will happen incrementally. But yes, everyone is working towards this goal of a digitally powered airport, similar to what we've done at Head.
And is there a timeline for it, Sunil? When do you expect that to be live at Delhi? Just curious because it's my home airport.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to commit anything on air because I'm not the official spokesperson for PMR in that sense. But I mean, if you look at the trend, the healthy competition between airports will push every airport to be at a certain level, a digital level, in the next 3 to 5 years. I have been previously involved in deploying many of these systems at Xavier. So the elements will be there. It is all about then the prioritization, which is normally influenced by the demand and supply and the growth of the airport. So
All right.
there's no point investing in everything today when the demand does not mandate the need for complex systems.
Sure. Just staying on that for a second more, Sunil. Digital twin, probably one of the most overloaded phrases in aviation right now. I'm wondering what's your litmus test to distinguish a living digital twin from a glorified analytics dashboard. We were talking about just putting a few screens together and having some siloed data. So and that's what I'm referring to. And what does a real one allow you to do that you simply could not do before?
I mean, the one end of a digital airport is a glorified dashboard. So dashboard which shows you metrics based on data that gets collected in different systems. What dashboards do is they tell you near real time what is happening. Okay, or even you can go historically and check what was the trends and such. What it does not allow you to do is to get a real feel of what is actually happening right now. It is not possible to run what if scenarios. It is not possible to test, let's say, for example, if there is a spike in aircraft landings at a certain peak hour, and you say, okay, what if 5 aircraft gets delayed? What are all the resources I need? What's the impact of the disruption? How much time will it require me to get back on schedule? So this is what a real digital twin enables you to do is get a live feel of what is exactly happening on ground and test what if scenarios. Also, then overlay it with the new technologies like AI to predict what will happen and what you need to do in order to address many of the dynamics of a live airport, which is maybe the terminal occupancy peak, some asset failures like gate failures or such, aside congestion. So, uh, how do you predict what will happen and how you could react?
So, where or how is AI being put to use at Indian airports today, Sunil? Whether it is turnaround prediction, gate assignment, passenger flow modeling, and where is it still just being used as a showpiece thing just to tell people we are using AI? I just need your perspective on it.
I mean, a large impact of AI is already being felt and is in production today for computer vision based use cases such as queue management, baggage flow, predicting turnaround milestones based on exactly what is happening on ground. So, computer vision would include the CCTVs, would include video analytics, would include the combination also with lidar and such uh, to help in these operations to bust queues, ensure baggage reaches on time, and predict what is happening on turnaround. Agentic AI is also being deployed in various customer service areas across airports, and there are continuous improvements in this customer service applications being made with the verbalized machine language to understand and interact with humans in real time. So that is also definitely in production. But there is still a hurdle, and it stops at really getting the full benefits of a fully automated dynamic gate and stand assignments that are continuously optimizing based on passenger flow, based on aircraft flow, based on airspace availability, weather changes. So taking all these in and then learning as you go and automating that stand and terminal assignment is still depends a lot on experience, on manual intervention, and in that sense, is still a dream.
Airlines and airports still have, one can say, overlapping but also misaligned technology priorities at the operational interface. Whose job you think is to fix that coordination problem? And has anyone in the world actually cracked it? I mean, probably barring Dubai and Emirates, Changi in Singapore, Doha and Qatar, maybe Atlanta and Delta. I don't know about Atlanta. Actually, it's a different
Mm.
company altogether, unlike the other three examples I mentioned. But yeah, I mean, whose job is to fix that coordination? And any examples where you think that those things are perfectly in sync?
Theoretically, every airport already has their airlines and operators forums, so there are committees where all the actors, which is the government, the airlines, the security, the airport, they all come to address all the common issues. But it is differing priorities that sort of create the friction. The priority for an airline may be to have to always get a stand which is closest to the security checkpoint. But that's not what an airport can do always. It means it's a cost. to an airport. Now, whose responsibility it is? We've always considered ourselves, and this is globally the case, members of the same village. So it is everyone's responsibility. But in the end, what it turns out, where it turns out to be a difficult decision to crack, is who's going to put the money up for it, who is going to consistently own it. You could put out a fire of an aircraft disruption today, but who is going to continuously own putting out these fires? That is an ongoing challenge. So if you just boil down the KPI, if you give a KPI of saying aircraft turnaround must be 35 minutes, then it becomes everyone's responsibility and everyone's KPI to do it in within their allotted time. The Singapore or Hong Kong, they go about it from the other way. They say, okay, my aircraft turnaround KPI is so many minutes. So what does that translate into for the ground handler? What does it translate to for the security? What does it translate to for check-in and boarding? And then it becomes everyone's responsibility.
Most conversations around airport technology focus on the terminal. Why is the airside the next real digital frontier for digital transformation, Sunil? And how much operational capacity you think Indian airports can unlock through better data orchestration there?
Uh, the airside has never stopped being a priority. It is just that the terminal side operations was easier to touch and feel. It is easy to deploy systems, SOPs, processes in the terminal side to speed up operations. Until now, that side, the terminal operation side, was the most inefficient. It still remains to a certain extent. But what has happened is with technologies like self-service, biometrics, the speed, the bottlenecks have gone in the terminal side, and that bottleneck has been pushed now to the gate. So and that is where the focus shifts to the air side. The efficiency with which an airport manages to deploy all its agencies to turn around an aircraft consistently has a lot of potential to unlock easily in a day. There is this industry statistic which I've always doubted and I've never really managed to precisely check. But it is always said that every 10 minutes you save on an aircraft turnaround allows you to do 4 turnarounds more in a day. So it is possible to link saving time and improving the consistency to unlock 20-30% more of your capacity through the day. But that really depends on how inefficient you are in the first place. Because as you hit high levels of efficiency, it becomes more and more difficult to get that delta improvement. And efficient airports are at that point. Airports like Narita, where you don't have disruptions or loss of bags as such. Narita, Kansai came out recently saying they've not lost a bag in their entire history of operation. So these kind of airports, they've hit their efficiency levels, and it becomes much more difficult for them. But for us in India, it will unlock a lot of capacity.
You were just talking about turnaround times. And if you speak to airlines, they would say the turnaround time performance is a persistent pain point at the airports. How much of that is an IT and data integration issue, Sunil? How much of that is physical infra or process discipline issue?
Actually, it's a combination of all the above: IT, data integration, the discipline with which all the activities happen in the terminal, and airside, it is physical infrastructure. It's all the above. Consistent turnaround time is as much subject to availability of airspace. You could get delayed in the air itself, which is what happens most of the time. The airport availability of the airport infrastructure, the efficiency with which ground handling entities like the GPUs, the catering, the apron baggage handling, all of them work together, and the speed of passenger processing through queues at the terminal entry, at check-in, at security and boarding. So often these various actors, that is airline, GHAs, airport security, border control, etc., are acting in their own siloed timelines. They have their own siloed timelines, their own KPIs, and they do not share information, because of which there's no unified source of truth. Everyone has their own version of the truth, and hence it becomes difficult to understand at any given point in time what was the origin and the real impact to the turnaround milestone, because of somewhere the domino effect started and then the dominoes fell, but you don't know where it started because everyone has their own version of it.
Our country has made significant strides with DigiYatra, with biometric boarding. From a systems architecture standpoint, how mature is India's biometric travel identity infra compared to what you have seen deployed across APAC? What's the one technical or political or some other hurdle still standing between us and frictionless international travel?
If you think of a passenger bag as digital and not just the physical flow, but also the digital flow, you will see that the passenger and bag retain the same physical identity as they move across the terminal. But depending on your touch point, your identity changes. DigiYatra has a different view of your identity, and it use that at queue management at terminal entry, secure queue management at terminal entry and security. But as soon as you hit the check-in, you're in the airline biometric domain at check-in and gate. And then at border control, you're in the Bureau of Immigration biometric domain. So in that sense, and that is where the friction comes because you're handing over that same passenger over to different systems where the passengers have to once again go through an identification and processing. So the gold standard over here is Hong Kong and Singapore, where you enrolled once and you go through with that same phase right up to boarding, irrespective of the airline system, irrespective of the immigration system, irrespective of the check-in system. So that is where it is. The success of India's biometric program is really dependent on how either DigiYatra can scale up to onboard airline check-in and boarding, as well as the government's own immigration control checks onto its platform, or in creating a platform where there is a smooth transfer of information. In that sense, the passenger does not feel they are going through various.
Can you share an example from an airport in India or maybe APAC where a relatively small systems change could be in gate allocation, stand allocation, turnaround management, wherever, produced a fantastic impact on OTP, on passenger experience?
Yeah, and I guess I'll give you the same example of passenger processing. So it's not just a system change, but combined with a process change and with the combined effort from airport, airline, and government, has changed the concept of passenger flow and processing across some of the airports in APAC with the introduction of technologies such as biometrics in the recent years. Now, biometric is one technology, but the process change required behind and the collaboration amongst all the players, which is airport, airline, and government, is very crucial. And this, while this end-to-end biometric flow is not yet implemented in India, but regional examples like Hong Kong and Singapore are showing that it is possible to go from curb to the boarding gate in less than 5 minutes. And in my own personal experience, I have so many times landed in Singapore and reached my home in less than 30 minutes, so with less than 4 or 5 minutes to even collect my bags and be at the taxi stand. So yes, so that is where there has been the biggest change. It's the biggest change not only in terms of the airport's efficiency, its capacity to handle passengers, but also in terms of the customer passenger experience, the happiness that one feels, the relaxed way of flow that you can see when it's an end-to-end biometric processing.
WAISL competes in this space occupied by these massive players, the SITA, Amadeus, IBS, uh, fantastic list of global players. Um, what do you think is stopping Indian IT companies to scale up in aviation technology?
You have to, there is a lot of history to this as to why some companies have managed to grow globally. And I think without boring your listeners too much on and going back to the history of the end of World War II, when all these agencies, the UN, the ICAO, the Council, IATA, they were all created. Now, at that very inception itself, there were certain standards, policies for UN member countries to follow, which resulted in the creation of organizations such as SITA, Amadeus, Collins Aerospace, Sabre, and such. Now, while this level of global event is unlikely to happen, but one could take a page out of China's way of handling it. They have created organizations which is at the level of these same global players by implementing policies which promoted all the airports and airlines to adopt a single common system. So what stops organizations or IT companies or technology companies in India to grow global is that we are still in a competitive market that doesn't allow one the space and the opportunity to grow. So I would say it is the competitiveness of Indian market which has prevented them from growing. Whereas it is large scale global events that have created organizations like SITA, Amadeus.
Sunil, if you had one policy recommendation for the Indian government that would do the most to accelerate digital transformation across airports over the next 5, 6 years?
We've talked a lot about the need for flow of data across stakeholders, and still data sits in silos. So if I have to choose one policy recommendation as the first very important step, would be to sort of create a mandate for a unified aviation data exchange policy, which requires all airlines, private airport operators, ground handlers, air traffic control to feed standardized real-time operational data into a secure platform, which then can be used across the ecosystem as is necessary, and will even promote the development of different kind of applications, a different way of looking at data and analyzing data to help the aviation industry grow.
And my final question, Sunil, what's that one metric you would want every Indian airport CEO to look at daily that maybe most of them aren't obsessing over so far?
I mean, everyone talks about sweating assets, okay? But I want to go behind the mirror and say, I think perhaps we should be looking at the idle time per passenger minute of these assets. Because as you're trying to increase the productivity of assets, you're also looking at the idle time or the wasted potential of every asset, and to reduce that going forward, and to find ways of how to reduce asset idle time per passenger across the infrastructure, across gates, across baggage carousels, across security lanes, so across your retail. So how do you reduce that asset idle time?
Sunil, I have to thank you for being so kind with your time. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Vishal, and I hope that there was a lot of value to you and your listeners from this session. We are all on LinkedIn and easily accessible, so hope to get a lot of feedback and a lot of perspectives post this podcast.
And that's a wrap on episode 77. Next Monday will be the 33rd episode of the Indian AdGeek, and it will feature Mike Follett, the CEO of Lumen Research. It's going to be a really interesting episode. Feel free to follow me on social. You will find me everywhere, including Blue Sky, if that's your thing, as at Vishal Mehra. Always happy to have your feedback. With that, keep your tray tables up and your seatbelts fastened. I wish you well and happy flying, my friends.